Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Derek Johnson. I am the chair of the Oakland Workforce Development Board here in the beautiful city of Oakland. This Pathways for Returning Citizens discussion is very dear and true to my heart. I have been employing from that population since the early 1990s, actually 1991 to be specific. Watching young men and women, especially from my community, the African American community, and others who have never had a job or an employment, enter into the workforce, get a job, become productive, and contributing citizens and transforming their lives is very impactful for me personally. And we have great panelists here. I'm going to introduce. And when I call your name, panelists, you can just take it from there and introduce yourself. There is some background noise to me. I believe that might be you. Can you mute yourself for a second?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, try to stay as still as possible then, if you can. We just hear you. There you go. You're muted. Beautiful. All right. So I'm going to start this out with Kathy Chow Rothberg, who is the CEO of the Lao Family Community Foundation. So Kathy, why don't you let everybody know who you are?
Hi there, everyone. So nice to see all of you. Eric and Armando, it's been a while. And Derek, nice to meet you finally via Zoom. I'm Kathy Chow Rothberg, the CEO of Lao Family Community Development Corporation in Oakland.
All right. And Tamia, now I'm going to ask you to unmute. We want Tamia here, who is from the Contra Costa Workforce Development Board. Please introduce yourself. Hey, Tamia, maybe we'll come back to you. We'll wait for Tamia to get her camera and mic together. So Armando, we'll switch over to you. Armando Hernandez, introduce yourself for the VP over there of Community at Unity Council. Hi, Armando.
Sure. Yes, hi, Vice President of Community Programs at the Unity Council. My background is in public health. I am an immigrant and a first-generation college graduate. Thank you for having me.
All right. And Eric, going over to Eric Shanks there. What's happening, Eric?
No, not too much. And thank you. It's good to see Kathy, Armando, and Tamia. All these folks are just, I'm really thrilled to be here. Eric Shanks with Cypress Mandela, Executive Director. And my background is not only construction, environmental, but also the legal in both private and public sector.
All right, wonderful. Well, it looks like Tamia might be having a few little technical difficulties. So we will, when Tamia comes back on, we will, have her go forward with her introduction. So let's just jump right into it. I know there's a lot of barriers to economic mobility and access to quality employment are deeply woven into our fabric of how we currently call this thing called life. And I had the pleasure of being on a call earlier today and spoke briefly with Kathy. And Kathy, I just want you to just share what you're doing, why you feel the system and the models that we currently have are just not working, and just share with us the work that you're doing that's really innovative and changing how we think about workforce housing and how they're interrelated.
Thank you, Derek. I think to answer this question, one of the things I was reflecting upon was really about, Joseph Campbell, the American writer, and his book about the hero with 1,000 faces. And that's what I feel about our work, both Lao Family's work and even like personally, my own journey in this field. So, Lao Family is a 42-year-old institution, and we were founded in Richmond, California. And it was founded really by the journey of a group of tribal people from the country of Laos who were displaced because of war and their interaction and assistance to the U.S. military, the CIA, during the Vietnam War. So these groups of community members were dislocated, displaced because of war, and their assistance to the U.S. military into Richmond, California, into Easter Hill and North Richmond, and the flatlands of West Oakland and East Oakland. And that's how Lao Family was founded. We've always had a long history with the faith-based community because our first offices after being founded in a apartment, 3-bedroom apartment in Richmond, it was really through the sponsorship and partnerships with the faith-based community. So, in the beginning, our work was really related to helping refugees, and it was more simple. It was really about English and how to navigate transportation and enrolling your kids in school, and trying to learn how to work in America in this new environment that we're in. So that was our journey, and journey from the mountains and being an agriculture community with no formal education and no hot water or toilets, and no technology, no banking system, no voting system. Imagine being transplanted in an Airbus to San Francisco airport and landing in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, and then surviving, and then finally thriving, and then coming back and helping and giving a hand to the other community members. So that's really the story of the journey of Lao family. And where we're at today, interestingly, the last, I think Lao family's been growing, at a rate of about 20% a year for the last 40 years. And when COVID happened, it was really an interesting time because we had just built a brand new 30,000 square foot headquarter and program office in the Fruitvale, San Antonio neighborhood. And during the last 7 years of Lao family's journey, our population has tremendously transformed. We went from refugees, imagine from Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and then we went and started to serve Ukrainian, Afghan refugees and folks from, Russia. And then over the years, Mexico, Brazil, Guatemala, El Salvador. And now we're back to Afghans and Syrians and Ukrainians again. But more importantly, the last 5 years, our 50% of Lao families, 31,000 customers are African Americans. They are reentry. They are traffic victims of labor as well as sex traffic. They are children exiting the foster care system, and they are homeless families, both refugees as well as American-born high barrier population. And so the model that we have been working with, our homelessness and affordable housing and our workforce is really not touching the lives. There's a gap in our system that's not reaching the population that we're serving, which is ethnic as well as American-born high barrier population that is not benefiting from the prosperity that's in the Bay Area. So the new model is a model where it's a campus model for us. You create a campus, which is like our 3.5 acre site on East Avenue now in Oakland. It's a model where we have 285 units of furnished studio. It's a partnership with Alameda County Probation Department and the City of Oakland and the private sector with G6 Corporation. And basically, we have America's Job Center, which is the partnership with the City of Oakland, Oakland WIB, where you're the chair of the WIB. And through the CARES Act, we brought a job center to the campus. Our partnership with Alameda County Food Bank, we're bringing food to the campus. And then the Radisson Hotel next door, we went over there and now we're contracting with them. They bring 3 meals a day. And then our partnership with Roots Clinic, they bring the clinic to the site. And our partnership with CORE, they bring mental health. And now we're bringing a adult high school. And we're also, partnering with logistics, the largest African-American owned bus training program, which is Michael's Transportation Academy. And we're bringing it all on campus. Plus a partnership with Lyft and Airbnb and a whole bunch of private sector apartment owners so that we can create a campus. Everything is there so that we can move them also with savings and financial support into permanent housing. And we do it intensively. That's our model.
Nice work. Well, thank you, Kathy. We will kind of circle back. We have a couple of more questions about that, but I see Tamia has joined us. So Tamia, if you will, there you go. How you doing today? You're unmuted now. No, you're muted. Let's see. You're muted. Yeah, you're still muted. You press whatever you pressed, you had unmuted. Yeah, you're still muted. Okay, we're gonna come back. I'll come back to you. So I have a question for Eric. Eric, you do some great work over there at Cypress Mandela. Why don't you tell us a little bit about us, and then let me know about the intersections and what are the barriers and what do you feel some of the solutions are to the workforce situation as it stands?
Well, Cypress is about 3 generations old now. It's an outgrowth from the Cypress and Loma Prieta earthquake and the Cypress freeway structure that collapsed. And so I think on a part we started as a community response to not having skilled labor to put on projects for the reconstruction and rebuilding. And it started off as a 9-week program, it progressed to a 12-week programs. And what we experienced, there wasn't enough time. And then it ended up 16 weeks because we kept adding on modules that would make the populations that we were serving much more marketable and where they could sustain themselves over time. And today, I'm happy to say that our core is still pretty much intact, but we also added on health and safety training that allowed them to venture off into other avenues. And so traditionally started with the trades. We expanded to include utility companies like PG&E, East Bay Mud were part of our original group, and also to incorporate BART, which is another fairly new one around that. The other part on the health and safety and green sector are the markets that we cover in terms of demand side energy integration. Traditionally, that was solar and environmental justice tied together around those two. And part of the issues that we've experienced over the years is that this is we're facing more. Each of the clients are not just looking for jobs. There's so much personal stuff that's ahead of that trauma. We were coming from situations where there are victims of crimes themselves. They're also ones who've been perpetrating crimes. So we deal with very heavily in a reentry population and but now I'm happy to say in that population, when they come out and they're turned loose back in the general population, they don't have skills, they're still angry, and then they're demanded to have jobs in which they don't qualify for. And so we have to fill in those gaps, as Kathy was talking about. I'm sure Armando and Tamia will identify. So the mental health services that she's talking about to deal with being heavily reliant on substance or self-medicating on top of the trauma, and then trying to get through a training with us for 16 weeks to qualify for these entry-level positions. The positions are there. Are they aligning and can they get through? And they need sometimes immediate monies in order to deal with their obligations in terms of food and rent and taking care of the babies that they may have around that part. So having said that, I think what Kathy has alluded to is like the trauma-informed, dealing with the housing, the mental health, all of that's important. The job training could be there, but it won't be successful without the interventions of these other stopgaps to deal with those barriers to employment. And they're only going to mushroom if we want to deal with that right now. And what we're seeing is that age group is even younger now that's happening. So if they got involved with criminal justice at the age of in elementary, 8, 9, 10 years old, and if they started smoking weed or engaging in drugs at that age, then by the time that they reach their teens, and then their adulthood, that means that if the brain doesn't develop until they reach 25, then their brain still remains undeveloped. And the part that is really relying on that is the part that is the emotional and the reasoning components. And that's where we find most of these issues. And I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I'm going to circle back. I have a question for you in a little bit. But Armando, I'm going to kind of direct this next question for you. When opportunities for workforce development to expand and deepen. I know you're doing some great work over there at Unity Council. We visited last week, sat down. So just explain a little bit more about your programs. How are you trying to diversify to attract, especially youth, into the workforce training?
Thank you, Derek. Just for those who don't know, so the Unity Council is a 58-year-old organization, and we have services for children, families, seniors, small businesses. But in terms of career development and workforce, our services are for adults and youth, and we also have a social enterprise where we do a transitional employment model for returning citizens and other individuals who are having trouble.
You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if it's your mic. Yeah, we can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I keep okay.
Yeah, we can.
I'll keep trying.
There you are. There you go. We can hear you
Okay.
now.
In terms of youth, I think one of the things that we have noticed is, there's just so much going on. I think there's a lot of emotional exhaustion from the pandemic and also the previous federal administration. As we know here in Oakland, we deal with multi-generational poverty and lack of investment from city and county in certain areas. So I think we have to be intentional. The pandemic really showed us that this is a very rich area in terms of services, in terms of employment, in terms of opportunity, and everyone is getting those opportunities equally. So we have to be really intentional and create a system that we want to see if we want people to have opportunities for career and economic mobility. So one of the things that we're doing, there's two things I wanted to highlight. One is healthcare pipeline. So that's, all the way from assessment, training, vocational certification, internship placement, job placement, the whole thing. And so one of the things that has really worked for us is working with, hopefully you can hear me. I
Yes.
hear a little bit of echo. So one of the things that has worked for us is working with training providers who do expedited certification programs, because people don't really have the time to do like class after class and take 2 years to get medical assistant certificate. And so we're working with training providers who can do expedited programs. And then we provide the whole person case management to remove barriers for people. So that's something that we're doing, for the county, for the city. We have some foundation funding as well. The second thing I wanted to mention is in terms of youth, just really meeting youth where they are. So we have a milestone program where we help youth with everything from making a resume, learning how to interview, applying for jobs, going on paid internships. And so every time they complete one of those milestones, we incentivize them as a way to engage them and for them to feel that they are reaching their goals. So that's something that has really worked for us in the past couple of years that we've been using. And I think I'll pause there, but I'm happy to say more about any of those.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out a question, and then just whoever wants to answer it, just raise their hand, and I'll acknowledge them. But I know that I see in the chat from Lena, and Lena, that's a very good a statement that you're making. She's a past Lao youth intern, Kathy. But a lot of times, we have these training programs, but it's really, really hard today to get the youth in a training program without them being compensated, right? So how is your private? How is the government? How are we partnering with local agencies to make sure that the resources are put given to your agency so that you have the resources to actually pay stipends or even payroll checks, however you do it at your organization, so that when the participants participate in your program, they're also getting paid while they're training, like on the job training type of situations. Do you all have those type of programs in your organizations? And if you do, can you explain a little bit about them? Kathy?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think on the job training and individual development, training accounts, as well as incentives are really critical and for earn while you learn.
Yes.
For example, our partnership with the city of Oakland WIB, and our partnership with Bitwise. So Bitwise Industries, which is out of like Fresno, Stockton area, is working with Lao Family, and we have an Oakland youth that we put into the program, and he's learning to become a Salesforce administrator. He couldn't break into the sector on his own, and then through a introduction from a WIB, a staff member, Tamara, who's not with the city anymore, but who's now the WIB director over at Richmond Works.
Yes.
We connected with Bitwise, and then our out of school youth enter the Bitwise program. And so the OJT from the city of Oakland paid for $5,000 of the training, and then post the $5,000 training because it's a 1-year training. So he's earning while he's learning, and they're paying him $25 per hour. So he's almost done with the training, and then it's a pipeline directly to the IT industry and to be a Salesforce administrator. And so his salary that he'll be starting is $85,000 to $115,000. And that is a good job with good benefits and a career pathway. And that's what we need to do for our out of school youth, as well as the other opportunity population that Eric and Armando and I are talking about, which is reentry, as well as individuals who are single parent or who are coming out of the system, or they're brand new refugees. And then let me just add that a second pipeline that we're working with is environmental science. So La Family has been very strategic and careful about what kind of sectors that we're innovating in, what kind of pipeline. We wanted to focus on industries where you have to get a license or specialized training. And for us, one of them is environmental science remediation management. And so the things that they're learning, whether it's Cypress Mandela or La Family, it's the construction, but we have the schools, and we partner with the Union NATEX and Local 67. We brought the school on our campus in Oakland, paid for the tuition through the WIOLA system, and then provided food, breakfast, lunch, dinner, as well as food for them for the weekend, as well as clothing for them and interviewing, as well as escorting service for the interview, because they got to get to the job interview and they need to be able to eat while they're in the training because they need to matriculate. We have an abundance of amazing programs at Peralta College District, but if you can't get them to enroll, you can't support them in order to matriculate and then place them and hold them in their retention and then move them into housing, then the system hasn't been effective to meet the needs of the challenged population that we're working with in Oakland.
All right, thank you. Armando, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, one of the things that we have seen is just that people face just multiple barriers. And so a lot of the times when the different programs don't necessarily flow or connect with each other, that creates more barriers for people. And so I'll give you an example. So our funding from the city of Oakland, it comes from federal state funding. And so there's a lot of regulations about who qualifies and what those funds can pay for. So what we have to do is raise funds from philanthropy or other sources to be able to create a program that can catch the gaps and the the areas that don't quite work for everybody. So that's otherwise, we would have to say, okay, you can get this, but not this and that, and so I think that's one of the things that I think needs to happen in this. When we're talking about the Great Awakening, I think the pandemic showed us that just outcomes are going to be poor for people who have less access to opportunities, to resources. And so we have to be able to think creatively about how we employ, how we keep employees, but also how we serve people in the community so that.
Hey, Armando, I'm gonna ask you. You maybe take you're real choppy. We can barely. You're going in and out. It might be an earphone situation. We are on mute now. Okay, well, Eric, I'm going to shift over to you, and I don't know if Tamia, if you can chime in whenever you're available. But Eric, when we talk about, I know you have a lot of returning citizens in your program, correct? What about the soft skills? How are the soft skills being addressed? Because that's a major issue for the other side of the table. For those of us that employ, soft skills are very, very important. And can you address the soft skills training that you all take your participants through?
Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive when we come to our soft skills and life skill development. There is emotional intelligence, there's understanding the emotions, there's communication class that they have to do, and there's ongoing maintenance that we find. There's a fatherhood component that we contracted with Man to Man, Mr. Stuart Pirelli, and it's such high level that they begin to see the linkages. We don't believe in just watered down versions of that, and we know that if we attack where the issues are, that we can uproot that. And some do require more comprehensive counseling outside of our expertise. So we link with that. And so we're workforce development partners. So, and to tie that back to the other parts that you were saying about having enough funding for our youth, is that we do have to think about them. For those who are on track, there's really not a mechanism for them to earn as they go along. So them earning during the summer while they're learning is not a bad approach, but however, we don't want that to turn into a concept of welfare. And I think that could easily happen. So you have to make sure that you lay that out. So we're very cautious about how we deal with that, especially for our returning citizens. I'll give you a little example. The emotional intelligence parts say that you have to show up every day in order to earn. If you're out a day, then you're not really earning. So you lose money, and the employer loses money when you don't show up daily. And so how are you going to earn money if you're home and you're not doing that? And so you have to hold people accountable. So the accountability component is a part of their training for the soft skills. And that's the first thing, show up. The second part is active listening and then being able to repeat simple instructions back. If you can't do that, then why are you here? So the understanding of why you're in training in the first place. If you're trying to gain skills and knowledge, then you have to show up daily. And so that's the first lesson that we would want to teach in the mirror. How does that transfer over to the job markets? Because if you can't work safely, you don't listen to instructions, then you can't follow SOP, standard operating procedures. And how does that link again? So your stipend and the hands-on part, that connects to something like this. And the first thing that drops out to you is that you can earn $114,000 simply by following instructions and showing up. And so you connect it to something that's real, and the outcome part grows, and it's not just training with no outcome. And I'll stop there.
All right, thank you. I want to circle back to Kathy real quick. And Kathy, if you don't mind, you talked about your model of a campus, and I'm very intrigued by that. I feel that's very new and innovative. And do you think you can expand on that just a little bit? Like where did that come from? How did you think about it? What were the barriers that you saw prior to creating this model? And how is that model, how are you breaking through as an organization those barriers with this model?
A lot of this came from studying the data. And the data that we study regarding our refugee, our reentry, our youth, the populations that we serve, one of the critical barrier was housing and income. So then, we always talk about transit-oriented development, and then we have to get our people to the job centers. Well, how about creating the housing at the job centers? And so it is hard. And if we're thinking about a new development from ground up, new construction, we're going to be forever, 20 years before we can even get to that model. So we started thinking about how do we create a campus where everything is there, and then everything else to get to the job is a barrier that we have to just remove. We have to address it and remove it. Okay, so that means that the outcome, the A to Z, is the jobs. We want them to have good jobs. We want to have income. When they have income, they can have savings, they can have health insurance, they can have housing. But to get there, if the transportation is a barrier, you address it. The education is a barrier. To get these good jobs, these high road jobs, these build back better, all of these apprenticeship programs, you need a high school diploma or you need a GED. And if you're going to try to move somebody with this investment into adult education for high school, we had to create a new leveraging of our resources and our partnership. So we were able to identify a 3.5-acre campus in Oakland that was the largest vacant motel in the state of California. And when I approached G6 Corporation, they rejected me for many months, but there was no way I was going to give up on this property. I had to get to the CEO of G6 Corporation, and finally we did. And it was hard for many people to believe that we can do this because we're doing it in such an innovative, different model of affordable housing. And we had to put our own investment of $1 million private investment into the property in order to secure it, not only to rent it first, but to purchase the property. And so we're now in the process of the purchase. So that model, it's a $24.2 million purchase. It's a significant amount of money, but imagine trying to build from scratch up. That's like ground up. It's $100 million. So it does require a tremendous amount of work still for the renovation, but it's all furnished. It's a roof. It's a roof. We got to get people into housing, and everything else to get to Z, we got to do. So the combination of partnership, we had partnerships with Airbnb. We had it with 18 motels with multiple private property owners, and then the integration. All that you're hearing, Derek, between Armando, Eric, and I is about integration. You need to have integration because we are not legal businesses. We don't have attorneys. We are not clinicians. We're not doctors. So we have to leverage all the resources in the community, Oakland, Alameda County, the region, the Bay Area, California, federal, private foundations, corporations, banks, the city, the county, the state, the feds. We're weaving and layering all this money to support the families and the participants so we can get them to Z. Z is financial independence, social independence, or earn income that they can take care of themselves. That's our goal. And that's where the thinking came from. And the data is because the feedback that we got from our customers and looking at our casework and looking at studies and the experiences of the customer and each one of us in the community who are providing this service. So we want our policymakers, the county, the city, to understand and value how hard it is to weave all of this together. It's really hard. But we're doing it, but we need our policymakers to put more money to support our work because it's not something simple. It's actually really hard.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Kathy. And Ms. Hoy, I'm going to address your question in 1 second. I just have either for Armando or for Eric. It's from the workforce development side, we have a new ED, executive director for the city of Oakland, that I'm working very closely with, Sophia. We visited Armando already. We're going to come around to you, Eric, and Kathy. But what's really important from coming from the employer standpoint, right? That's hired from many of these organizations. How are you all working, together? Like how, is there collaborations so that because the issues aren't just silo issues. They're citywide issues, right? And not one organization can cover the whole entire city. And so is there some kind of collaboration effort do you see that could happen, or does it exist is my question. And if it doesn't, do you see that a possibility for that in the future?
Yes, we actually do partner together. Matter of fact, the Lau family, they're part of our consortium when we're dealing with the probation. They're able to refer folks over here, and I'm able to send folks over there. And so we have a very sophisticated referral system. And I think the pandemic kind of put a monkey in some of that process there, made it very challenging to service clients at that point. And the Unity Council has been a long-time partner of Cypress as well. And again, I think that we had some efforts before the pandemic that all of us were engaged in. And I think that's uncoupling now, at least from our standpoint.
Nice. Armando, you'd like to chime in there? Well, let's see. I think he's out. That's okay. This is the world of technology. Anything can happen, right?
Yes.
Roll with it. We cover them though.
Yes, we just keep going. So where do you all see and the reason why I keep kind of looking at you, Kathy, is because I feel that that model could be where the future lies, right? I mean, housing is such a major issue. It's one thing to provide jobs, especially for those returning citizens, right? If this is our emphasis, our returning citizens and formerly, those have been formerly incarcerated. I've personally employed people that have never had a job before, ever, right? And watching them get their first paycheck, watching them achieve a goal, and just watch their lives turn around. And yes, my sector is an entry level position. And I know the term now is a livable wage, but in some cases, people just have to get into the workforce, right? And then once they get into the workforce, then they can graduate and excel and move up. But what do you see are the opportunities for the workforce development, to expand and to deepen?
Well, from my perspective, I think the campus model really works because we started with the campus here in Oakland first. And then now we open a 5-acre campus in Sacramento in one of the most affluent areas in Sacramento. Imagine that. We have always worked in the trenches in the community, but we were able to find this beautiful 5-acre site, 30,000 square foot, 6 buildings with 1.7 acres vacant. That's already zoned for RD20. So our plan is to build 35 units of single family homes, but for rent, because if we have to make it for sale, they'd be $700,000 and our community members can't afford that. So I think where the WIB could play a role is that we're in this time period in the United States right now, where there's a tremendous amount of money at the state and federal, and we should not waste it. We should use it very, very carefully as an investor. So using it carefully in investing, including in housing, I think that we need help. The policymakers need to add in the menu of assets and investment is not just new construction affordable housing. We need to be investing in existing infrastructure of a portfolio that's already available all over Oakland. There are so many vacant buildings, underused buildings, slumlord, old types of properties that we can repurpose and redevelop. We need those funds. I mean, specifically Lao Family, just using us as an example. We have put 4,000 people into permanent housing in the last 60 months. I don't think you can name a nonprofit who's been able to do that. And the reason we're able to do it is we are using motels, Airbnb, and also partnerships that we have developed in the community. And we're directly placing individuals who are homeless, reentry victims, refugees, directly into the permanent housing. And if sometimes, like the statistics, my staff and I were talking, it's been taking us about 45 days. And we put them into a motel, and we have a program that pays for at the motel, as well as during Airbnb. And then we place them into permanent housing. The partnership right now with Alameda County Probation Department, basically they pay for 6 months of housing. So we work with BOSS, with Cypress Mandela, with Men of Valor, Men and Women of Purpose, so many different groups. And we support them with all of what they need, the skill building during that intensive time period that we place them into permanent housing. I think that's what we should do. We can have a triage of different options. Sure, they can do the RV park, they can do the tough shed, but more investment needs to be put into acquisition and rehab of existing properties, and change the zoning, speed up the zoning so that we can repurpose these properties quickly, because then we can clean up our community. It's economic development. Yes. Okay, because we are rehabbing, making neighborhoods nicer, and putting infrastructure that's vacant right now into use. And people will be housed, they will have money, they will have jobs, they'll have health care, and Oakland will be stronger, and our community and our state will be stronger.
Nice. All right, Armando, we can get you off of mute?
Yes.
Yes, there you are. We got you. Come on, chime on in here.
Hopefully this works. I'm
Sound
not
like-
sure what to comment on right now, but one thing I was going to say earlier is in terms of everything that Kathy and Eric have been saying also about integrating systems and services. That's really the key we see to be able to make an impact because people don't just have one need. It is usually that people are dealing with, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if people were able to hear me in terms of multi-generational poverty or being immigrants or refugees. So I think that there's a lot of needs that people have that we're not addressing. So one of the things that the Unity Council is doing that I wanted to share is we're doing compensation analysis to make sure that we are also an employer of choice and that people are feeling compensated and that we are creating opportunities and pathways internally for promoting people to the highest levels of the organization. So we've started doing that analysis because we really want to make sure, since we hire from the communities that we serve, that our employees are also, sometimes when people get to a certain income, they no longer qualify for low-income programs. And so we want to make sure that everyone has opportunities to continue to have economic and career mobility. So that's something that I wanted to share here. The other thing we did is for essential workers, all of the folks who work in our maintenance programs and our residential services, during the pandemic, we did an increase of $1 an hour and free lunch for everybody for about a year and a half during the pandemic. So I think what I'm sharing are just specific examples of how I think we have to really step into the urgency and be creative and find ways, whether it's for long-term benefits or temporarily to help people that we know are struggling, and whether they are our staff or our clients.
Right, thanks. So Eric, I'm gonna start this next question out with you, and then we can start answering some of these questions and open it up to viewers, in the chat to answer, to ask questions directly. Just want to, what challenges do you face, and what needs to change, and what is needed?
Oh my gosh, right now it's inflation.
Yeah. Now, in COVID, with participants too, is that we're hearing that it's really hard, for participants to access and to even get involved and participate in these programs.
Yeah, and the key, my hat's off to both Kathy and Armando for the amazing job they're doing around the housing, the food insecurities, having people get through. They cannot get through a 16-week training program, much less a 2-year program or a 4-year program, right? Because we have so many issues. And now you see the explosion that I see in the that's playing out on the street, the robberies, any way that I can kind of get that. You have the no bail scenarios. So it's a revolving door with no end around that. And also the other part is the environmental justice as a side effect of being displaced from housing, right? It's not just anybody being displaced. The amount of furniture suggests that they lived in a home, and how they even try to organize that on the street. And then you have another population that is transitory, that is coming in. So they're not even eligible for any services. And so where do they go for help? And so we're ignoring it, and we're kicking a can down the road, and it's only going to get worse. So if the Lau family is putting in 4,000, Armando is putting in a whole lot of group. They release 4,000 people with another 4,000 eligible to release again. We're not set up for that. And we're only going to exacerbate the problems. And here's a bad problem. On our younger population who looks to the older population, they're going to refill that group. So now we're going to have more of that. So I see issue on top of issue. This is why we partner with OUSD to really kind of go after that middle and high school group to provide opportunities, and working with the employers to do direct linkage. And you can't wait, like you said, 2 years to get somebody into a job opportunity. Right. So we have to kind of move now and then exploit that. That's why we accelerate using 5-week kind of programs or 6-week, shorter, to get the stamina up. And let me say, for our program, we train to a federal standard because the standard to engage and to qualify is much higher. So we have to do the drug testing to get them through. So they have to come off those kind of drugs as well. So that's what I see so far.
Okay, nice. Well, go ahead, Armando.
Yeah, so your question is about challenges that we're facing, right? So I would say one at the organizational level is funding. Um, there has been very limited funding from the City of Oakland for workforce programs, as you know, Derek, over the
Yes.
past few years. And so, as much as we would all like to collaborate, it's really difficult when you're, having to really struggle for to maintain the level of service that you want to provide and that that your clients require. So I think that we're really hopeful that there will be an increase in funding, whether it's state or federal or philanthropy. I've been floating this idea of endowments. Obviously we know in academia there's endowed positions, right? And so the universities at least don't have to worry about raising funds for that particular chair or office if it's endowed. Why can't we do that? Why So I think that there's a lot of things that philanthropy has a lot of an opportunity to do during this time, when everybody's thinking about racial justice and social justice, gender justice. So I really hope that a lot of our partners in government and philanthropy step into the urgency of realizing that this is the time to put in money. And just a shout out to a really amazing foundation, Stavsky Foundation in San Francisco. It's a spend on foundation. And so they've been really doing larger investments that you normally see to be able to address the issue of food security in that case. But so that's one of the things I wanted to highlight.
Derek, what I would like to say is something that's simple that Oakland WIB, the city of Oakland, Alameda County can do, and the state and the federal government. But let's talk about local first, that you can really do to help all of us. Because I don't know if you know, but all of us here at this table, Eric, myself, and Armando, our organizations advance money on behalf of the government partners that we work with.
I do know that.
When we're awarded a contract, and these are reimbursement contracts, our organization advances the payroll for the staff, operation of the program, the wages for the youth, as well as the reimbursement program, OJT, for the employers. That's a tremendous amount of money that we're advancing on behalf of the government for these programs. As policymakers could advance 50% of our contracts. That would be very helpful for our work. Because otherwise we're getting lines of credits and we have to find cash flow from other sources to advance these contracts. Totally unfair from a policy standpoint to the nonprofits who are really serving the community. That needs to change. That's one thing that policymakers can make.
So Kathy, let me address that for you right there. So Sophia Navarro, who's the new executive director, I don't know if you've had the pleasure of meeting her yet.
Yes, know her very well.
Okay, good. That is one of the gaps that her and I are actually focusing on. How do you sustain the current model? Just is just annotated. It doesn't work, right? It puts too much pressure on your organizations or other organizations when we want you, or at least from my perspective, your focus should be doing the work, right? And if you're doing the work, then, our role and responsibility should be, how do we, either, write new policy, figure out, some type of way that it's not such a strain on your organizations. And that's why we are personally visiting each organization. And, I'm very determined to, and that's why I want to listen and learn, what are your struggles? And that's why that question is very important to me personally.
Thank you for saying that. And we appreciate that you guys are going to think like that. And we need the Alameda County Board of Supervisors as well to hear us, so that because all of us are working with Alameda County as well as Contra Costa County and the city of Oakland and other cities. Yes. The second thing I think that our policymakers, partners could help all of us with is making access to capital more feasible.
Yes.
and affordable capital. I've been working with, Lao Family's been working within the affordable housing sector, and Unity Council understands it more than anybody as well. Look at our investments and the housing development that we're building. It's costing $700,000 to $800,000 to build 1 unit of affordable housing in the city of Oakland, and it's $1 million in San Francisco. But to access capital, we need low cost capital. We're talking about 0% interest,
Yes.
1% interest, 2% interest, 3% interest. The CDFIs are charging us 7%, 8%. The banks are making money when they're lending to our construction projects at permanent housing. They're charging us 7%, 8%, and they want us to do new construction. If we can have capital to do our projects, which is to help the people, the capital should come from us to us in a low interest loan from the city, the county, or the banks. Give it to the foundations, give it to us at 0%, 1%, 2%. Don't make us pay 7, 7.5, and 8% for doing the kind of work that we're doing to serve the people. And they're getting CRA credits, and they're getting other types of credits. How is that right?
I hear you.
It's called banking.
I was about to say it's called Wall Street. Oh God. Okay, so I'm going to take a question for the chat because we're coming close to time. And so this is from Maritris Hoy, and hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. But are folks hopeful that the infrastructure funding will help? Is that coming? I'm not sure what infrastructure fund. Oh, from the I guess from the feds is the infrastructure funding. Yeah, because and to your point, Kathy, COVID is also exposed, so many disparities in society, but it's also exposed what the government can do, right? That we can, do the things that you're talking about. It's not impossible. We just need to make it happen. But go ahead.
Okay, so about infrastructure. So Lao Family works with a lot of lawyers in Washington, D.C., who's in the forefront in the know of the infrastructure money. So I got a list very early, the announcement about the infrastructure money and who was awarded, which federal credit unions, which CDFIs, and which banks got the infrastructure money. And you know what they're going to do? Several of them, they're going to sit on it.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to lend it out. They're going to sit on it, and they haven't even figured out what they're going to do with the money yet, but they got the money. So here we are, nonprofits trying to serve the people, and I'm trying to get in there. And some of these lenders, I knew that they got the money before they knew they got the money. So, and what we're hearing right now, privately, is that many of them may just sit on it. So we need to make sure that we're pressuring them through the CRA, California Reinvestment Coalition, or other policies, that they need to put the money on the street to organizations that are going to create projects, infrastructure, qualified projects. But we need the money because they're getting it as a grant. They are getting it as a grant from our federal government. So they need to make that money available. That's not right that they should get it as a grant.
I would have to agree. Eric, you seem like you have something you might want to add to that.
Yeah, I'd say, well, we would take our populations and go out and protest in front of the banks. And they don't like that kind of noise about infrastructure. And so to your point, Kathy, I think we do have to do something a little bit more public and to draw attention to it. As a matter of fact, why don't we just put together, I think there's a video already done about the calamity on our streets on San Leandro Boulevard and close around your shop, certainly around the corner from me. And certainly, Armando, we have things around the neighborhood that we could pull together and make that a reality where we could probably have that conversation to drive some results. I think that is at its best what we should be doing to hold these agencies or principals accountable, hold the monies to make a change happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I just know from personal experience, and I know all three of you as well from your lived and life experiences, the work that you're doing with the population the formerly incarcerated returning citizen population is critical, right? Because without jobs, without training, what is the result? They commit the same crime that got them in jail in the first place, right? And we're seeing that there's a revolving door. We need to really reduce recidivism, and we need to change the messaging around, what a returning citizen is. They're human beings like the rest of us, and if given the opportunity, which is lacking in the communities, and especially in the African American and Latino community, there's lack of opportunities, there's lack of hope. That needs to be instilled, and the only way to instill that back is through organizations like the three of you here. So just thank you so much for doing the work. I think we have like about 3 minutes left, so please chime in on anything you'd like to close out with, any message you would like for the public to hear.
Yeah, I want to say that we focus a lot on two groups, but our Asian brothers and sisters are also suffering, and they suffer in silence because either there's a language barrier or there's already a perceived notion, and that we have that on all sides. There's not a voice, and I'm really thankful to have both Kathy and Armando addressing the immigrant populations that come in and those who are here as well. It takes a special person and group with very deep understanding about human kindness, and we're all a part of one race, and we forget that somehow, and we forget how to partner and maneuver together to make things better for all. So when they do their part, we do our part. It can have a huge impact. And I want to thank you again for having me on this panel.
And for me, if I can just say, I think, workforce, one of the reasons I feel so passionate about this field is because I think it's ultimately about human dignity. And I think that it gives an opportunity to people who haven't had, the odds in their favor to go to college or to, inherit, money from previous generations or whatever. I think that workforce, we really have an opportunity to make an impact for people to have, better outcomes in life. And so, I'm really glad to be in this field and to work with amazing colleagues such as the ones that we have here. So thank you for this panel.
Well, thank all three of you, Eric, Kathy, Armando, and Tamia. Unfortunately, had technical difficulties, but thank you all so much for joining returning Pathways for Returning Citizens panel today. Really appreciate you. I look forward to getting to know each and every one of you even better. You will be seeing me. And so thank you so much for today. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mills College and Derek and everybody for this event. I'm glad. Let's keep the collaboration going.
Yes, we have to keep it going. We need one open. We need it now. So let's keep this moving. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Have a very nice day.